And I am real excited to have a discussion that I know you're not going to find this anywhere else. This is definitely an exclusive. Intergenerational Playgroups. Where are you going to go to talk about something that unique and innovative? Here's the place. And intergenerational playgroups are not something that is really in the United States. It's a concept that's more overseas, and I'm real excited to have Alison Chrisler with us today because she's going to help us learn more about what intergenerational playgroups are, but also the project that she's involved with is to get these here in the United States, and she really wants your feedback and input on the direction of her project. So Alison, really charged up to dive into this one with you today.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it.
Before we jump into the discussion on intergenerational playgroups, let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your background and what led to this unique career path where you're exploring this innovative concept.
Sure. So I'm Alison. I am a faculty member at American University here in Washington, DC. And a little bit about my background. So I actually grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin and moved to DC to actually do a child life internship in my undergraduate work at Edgewood College in Madison, Wisconsin. So I am a trained certified child life specialist. So I used to prepare kids for hospitalization. And the main emphasis of child life is play. So really teaching kids how to cope with medical experiences through play. After that, I started doing some research at Child Trends here in Washington, DC. They're actually now in Bethesda. And then I got my PhD at Michigan State, and then did a postdoc at Penn State, and then, worked at a couple nonprofits, one at Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago, and then here in DC. And now I'm at American. So I'm really excited to be here and talk more about these really innovative intergenerational playgroups.
Excellent. Wow. Well, impressive credentials there, and you've been all over. And okay, well, I know you've got some PowerPoints, but before we jump into those, let's kind of so you have received a grant to do some research and engage in a project that will be one of the first intergenerational playgroups here in the United States, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there are intergenerational centers. So bringing together maybe day programs for seniors and also a daycare and having them housed in the same place. But that can be pretty expensive and a heavy lift for communities. So this idea of a play group where we bring together the two generations and have it for like an hour for a couple times a week is something that we see less often in the US.
Okay, excellent. And you're going to share with us what this concept is all about. And so folks, if you've got questions on the concept, throw those out. But I think one of the main things that you want to accomplish today is you'd like to get a little bit of feedback from the community on the execution of your project, correct?
Right. You all are the experts, and I'm hoping to learn more about, maybe blind spots that I have that would be really optimal for us to be catching or looking for or focusing on given the need of the community.
And one of the things that I just want to remind our audience members about when we talk, like next week, we're going to talk about time banking. Okay. And okay, you could go out and organize a formal time bank, and that's great. And we want you to do that. But you could also just connect with a couple of neighbors and create this just informal, hey, I'll walk the dog for you and you cook a meal for me. And I look at without knowing the details of intergenerational playgroups, I hope that this inspires you all. Like, I mean, let's help Alison, let's help move this initiative. But if you've got a 5-year-old living across the street from you and you're looking for something to do, maybe this conversation will inspire an informal intergenerational play group right on your street. So that's sort of my little soapbox speech, not to take this discussion too literal, make this be inspiring, and the thing that I really like about it is, as you said, what do kids do? They play. And after a certain age, playing is not something that we talk about with older adults. And so I think the concept, we should never stop playing. And so that's one of the things that I get charged up when I just hear the title of this discussion today. So enough babbling. Let's get to your slide deck. And by all means, folks, don't forget, you can type in your questions in chat or Q&A. And Alison, if I see anything that pops up, I'll break in. Otherwise, take a break and you can ask me if there are any good questions. Okay.
Sure. No, that's wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here today. I'm really excited to share more about this idea of intergenerational play groups. So I really focus on the power of play. And play is, as Diane Ackerman has said, she's a contemporary American poet. She said, play is our brain's favorite way of learning. So play is universal. Everyone knows how to play. As adults, we might forget or even feel a little bit silly, right, when we're playing. But play is a really great way to bridge a divide between generations. And that is where I get most excited about this idea of bringing together 2 different age groups and really using play as a way to connect individuals. So when I was, kind of digging into an innovative way to bring together generations, I stumbled upon intergenerational play groups. So as Steve mentioned, this is more common overseas, and we see more of that focus on intergenerational connections. In the United States, as I mentioned, there are some locations, I'm thinking Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I think there might be some on the West Coast, where they actually have like a day program for seniors and a childcare center that actually are housed in the same location. And that does happen in the United States. There are not a lot of them, but it does happen. This is such a wonderful modality of really creating that intergenerational connection. I think for some, though, it's an institutional change, right? So, and there's a lot of, when it comes to creating a daycare center, right? There's a lot of regulations around that, or having a day center for seniors. So that is a great formal way, but more informal ways of creating these connections, I thought would be a fun, creative activity to do, community collaboration that we could start doing more in the United States. So what we know, of course, all of you know this, in the most recent census, that there are about 73 million seniors in that baby boomer generation who by 2030 will be at least 65 years old. So we are most concerned when it comes to health and well-being, reports of loneliness and social isolation among seniors. This is a pretty well documented health disparity in the United States, and often can lead to reports of depression and poor ratings of quality of life. A lot of babble. I forgot to mention that at American University, I'm in the Department of Health Studies, so I always have my health hat on. So the aim of these intergenerational play groups is to really foster community connectedness, We do know that with some seniors, they choose to age in place. And though that is a wonderful option, it can sometimes lead to reports of loneliness and feeling disconnected, especially if there might be challenges with mobility or maybe just not having those social circles to connect with. Intergenerational playgroups are a great way to reduce that social isolation, that loneliness, and also is a way to reduce ageism. So I actually became increasingly more interested in this when I started teaching some of my college students, and hearing some of this negative stereotypes and just negative views on seniors, that I was thinking to myself, not only this is something that we need to really start to, deal with and discuss more of, because there's so much wealth and knowledge that can happen when we have these like shared connections. So I love this quote by Miss Iris. When we are small children, we all played dress up and everyone had a good time. So why stop? So that is something that has really driven me to focus on these intergenerational play groups. Personally, anecdotally, I am very lucky to have my in-laws who live in Washington, DC. And I will never forget when I saw my father-in-law run across his backyard lawn with my 5-year-old. I had literally never seen, in the 15 years that I've been with my husband, I've never seen my father-in-law run like that before. And I thought to myself, wow, what an amazing way to really promote mobility, movement in a way that doesn't feel dreadful or like a workout, but is just fun. So that example really kind of spurred this interest. So I started kind of digging into these intergenerational play groups. So I'm going to show you just a really brief trailer. This is a program that was developed in Australia, and they actually created a TV series on it. But I like this trailer because it shows kind of those benefits that can be gained from those types of intergenerational play groups. So I'm just going to play it right here so you can see it.
For the elderly, home can be a lonely place.
I have no family here. I'm basically on my own.
Now, a life-changing social experiment returns.
No.
Bringing together new young folk.
Some old people don't know how to dance.
And new old folk.
I have no idea what's on my head.
And I've got no preconceived ideas how to treat a 4-year-old.
What's your name? I'll forget it in a minute.
To improve the lives of everyone involved.
Any older person that wants to teach my daughter some discipline is fantastic.
We can't reverse old age, but we can reverse frailty.
It's really good to see her starting to make some new friendships.
I feel a little bit scared.
Don't be scared. I'm here. I wasn't crazy about participating.
We didn't give them antidepressants. We gave them interaction with children.
Let me see where it takes me.
Go, 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 go. And relax.
I just feel like my first day at school.
Staying mentally active can improve brain function.
How do you remember all that?
Get ready to laugh and cry all over again.
That's called a turkey neck.
George, get to move more.
Move any more or fall over.
I'm getting quite emotional. I will remember today for a long time.
How old is old?
I think 20.
I'm really needing the love that a young one gives.
I feel like you're part of our life already.
I had so much fun.
We're almost there.
Together, we're stronger than we are alone.
The new season of Old.
So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of the benefits of an intergenerational play group. Of course, that one is, I don't know, the gold standard, or what we call dosage. It has a high dosage. There's a lot of interaction that's happening. It's probably similar to a daycare and a day center for seniors connected. So they're able to see each other, 6+ hours a day for 5 days a week for over, kind of like a semester. the goal of this program that I'm proposing is a little bit different. It's not going to be as intense because it is, we're just testing out the waters. But what I'm most interested, and I'm going to pause here, is what we should be measuring. What should we be looking at? So just to give you a bit of background of what I was originally thinking. So currently, right now, we're looking at organizations that have a part-time daycare center, where we can also have seniors come for an hour when they're done with their programming. So in DC, the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, OSSE, they are this regulating body of daycares. So we can't necessarily go into the daycare and have seniors and do that type of program because there's a lot of regulations that would make it really tricky. So when I've been talking with programs, they're recommending, okay, we have our part-time program. It's done at 1 o'clock. Why don't you have a play group from 1 to 2, right? So that we don't have to really deal with OSSE. So that's what we're looking at. I have a location in DC that they're pretty eager to do this. It's not set in stone, and I'm always interested in other locations that are interested. So that's kind of the location, or kind of the way I was thinking about formatting it. I, of course, would be there facilitating the groups, and I would have some college students helping facilitate it as well. So my question for the group is, what health, physical, mental, psychosocial outcomes do you think we should be focusing on? Originally, I'd shown that slide before, which is about social isolation and loneliness. But then I started thinking, what if these seniors are connected and they don't necessarily have, maybe those aren't components? What are other things that I should be considering, thinking about? I'd love to get, what some of you might be thinking, like what is at that top forefront that you think is really important to be looking at?
This is a really good one that sort of came in is that I believe it isn't, I've seen this too. There's these happiness kind of measurement tests that you can take on, I don't know how authentic they are, but even if it was just a relative measurement of happiness before an older adult entered your program, and then taking the same test at the end. I don't know if that could be something. Let's see, we got some good things coming in here. Lisa says quality of life.
Yep.
Morgan says observed positive interactions. Yeah, I think I agree on both ends of the spectrum. The child and the older adult. I have to read this comment because I think it's lovely. As Nicole says, my mother has dementia and loves babies. We attend story time at the library and go to the park to bring mom joy through watching little ones play. And Nicole, I'm glad you shared that, is that while we're talking about this research project, that's the perfect example that could inspire somebody else, is that because, as we know, a loved one with dementia, it can be very challenging, and what a great solution is just find these places where kids are congregating. It could be a playground, and what a great way to maybe calm a loved one who has dementia. So thanks for sharing that, Nicole. Okay, let's see. Melinda says reduced anxiety for the older adult. Yeah, and again, I know you're a researcher, Alison, but I don't know if these are things that you need to have formal tests, like control tests before and after, or could it just be based on observation?
Yeah, so I don't know, for those interested, the pre-post, I think someone mentioned, is usually like a great way of doing it. Sometimes we want pre, midway, and post. And there's actually this website called NIH Toolbox, and they have measures, these questions, like you say, happiness, quality of life, anxiety, they have these measures that we can actually use for free to do pre, mid, and post. So these are great ideas, ones that I hadn't necessarily thought about anxiety as being one, but that's a good one.
Wow. And here, I'm not meaning to share. A lot of times folks love seeing the websites when our speakers reference it.
Yes.
So here's the, if you do, is this, yeah, this is
Yep,
it.
this is it.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So some of you folks in your programs might find this interesting for some of the things that you're doing with your older adults. So thanks for sharing that resource.
And I do want to say, if anyone, my contact will be at the end, and I think maybe Steve might share it too. I don't know how it works, but always feel free to email me. I'm always happy to share measures that would be helpful for your programs, because I'm a big measurement person. I love programming. So this is a great tool because they're all rigorously tested, valid, and reliable tools.
Okay, great. And I will make sure I'm going to drop your stuff in here. Let me stop sharing again, and we can get back to some of the other suggestions. Is that, let's see, Renata said lack of boredom during the hour. And I think that would really be interesting to see over time. You know, not only for, especially for the younger children too, you know, I mean, what do we have here? If this is ongoing, Carrie says, if this was ongoing, I would be interested to know the long-term benefit, health, attitude, improved moods, etc. And Morgan says, you may also look at the stress levels before and after the program.
Yeah.
And then Nicole says, I constantly see parallels between entertaining toddlers and aging parents. Bringing the groups together is brilliant. Yeah, I agree.
And, you know, one reason why I also became interested in this is because, you know, in my undergraduate work, I did a internship at an assisted living association in Wisconsin. And my main role was to go with this activity coordinator who went to all these centers to teach centers like new activities to do with their seniors. And, you know, I can imagine sometimes the activities seem juvenile. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I think when you combine it with young kids, it doesn't really matter what it is, because you're doing it because you're with these little kids, right? Like,
so, you know, I love where you're going is that, for example, one of the things that happened in senior communities is you can't do anything juvenile anymore. Like, even if the residents of the community wanted to do it. So like, a coloring book as an activity in a senior living community would be deemed not appropriate. Okay. And the main thing that has hit the brunt of this is bingo. Okay. The game bingo. So many places it's sort of like, no, we don't play bingo here. We're beyond bingo. You know, everything's intellectual, what have you. But bingo is a fun game to play. I mean, there's nothing the matter with having fun if somebody wants to play bingo. But like you said, and you know, 13 years ago, I moved into a community with my my son, who was 6 at the time, and I was all excited that we were going to play bingo together, but they were doing the beyond bingo thing, so we didn't get to play bingo. If you add some of these activities that might be juvenile, if you add a younger adult to the mix, the older adult's going to enjoy playing that because of the kids. I love it.
and I also want to, in addition to these outcomes, when you're talking about, you know, stress, lack of boredom, I also was trying to think more about mobility and movement. If there's a way, if some of the structured play groups are more focused on movement, and not movement that would be to the point where seniors cannot participate, but movement in a way that feels natural and just maybe gets a little bit of an elevated heart rate going. I was curious to know what you all think about that, or what kind of comes to mind of when you think about playing with kids, what would be some ways to include that movement, and not having a whole hour of movement, but having some kind of component.
Yeah, well, I thought that your example of your in-law running across the, and that's, another thing here is that the power of being a grandparent, it's a superpower on both ends of the spectrum. But forget about blood relations. I mean, we can all be a grandparent to a young child, and what we will do and the motivation. Yesterday, our discussion was on hearing aids, and a lot of people resist getting hearing aids. But when I say to them, oh, so you don't want to hear your grandchildren? All of a sudden, it kind of opens their mind to, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that I'm delaying getting something that can help me hear. And you could see, if somebody was involved with the play group, you could use the same language. Let's see, a couple of other comments in the chat. Nicole Smith says, I find activities for both older adults and seniors at Hula Frog and Macaroni Kid. So we can all check those out. Oh, Barbara Sperry, this is a great idea, is measuring blood pressure before and after. Wouldn't that be kind of a cool thing to do? And Nicole says, I have to upgrade to Wordle. Just add music and you'll get hey, really good, Nicole. Just add music and you'll get the movement. I totally agree, is that music and dance is a great way to get things going. And yeah, I remember when my kids were in music, she talks about music together. My kids love that. Let's see, Dixie says, this intergenerational care idea fulfills the deep need for grandparents and grandkids who live far away to love a proxy or the elder proxy child. I agree. And yeah, we're spread all over this globe, and that doesn't mean that you can't be a grandparent to the kid down the street and vice versa.
And that was also one of my goals too, because DC is so transient and a lot of people don't have their families close to them. This is a nice way to create those types of connections where you feel like you're missing out on maybe that, because of course we love to Zoom, my kids Zoom my parents all the time, but it's not always the same, right, than having that like physical connection.
Yep, I agree. Okay, oh man, I love this. Thanks, y'all are, this is great comments here. Marianne says, Mom was skeptical about bingo and didn't attend until the grandkids came and wanted to go with her. After that, she never missed and loved it for 5 years until her dying day. Her BG, well, basically, then the kids inspired her to, she was playing bingo because the kids liked it. It gave her permission, and winning her bingo nickels and the items till she died. Thanks for sharing that, Marianne. That's a wonderful story and a reminder to us all that it's okay to have fun. Everything doesn't need to be necessarily purpose driven, but actually having fun between the generations, no matter what you're doing, is purpose driven. Awesome. Great. Well, okay. So yeah, we've got, hopefully you got some good ideas there,
Yes.
Alison. And then also, I put Alison's contact in there. So feel free to reach out to her after this. Some of you in this, if I was doing this research project, I'd be ready to hire some of the folks that are in or making comments. They sound like they're really knowledgeable in this area.
Yeah, I would also love to, if you're interested, doing maybe a smaller group where we're all Zoom and chatting about some of the outcomes. That would be really helpful too, if that's of interest. I also wanted to pose another question about intergenerational connections with college students. This is something I mentioned it earlier, more increasingly interested in. I was teaching a course on LGBTQ health, and we focused on, aging seniors who are members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. And when we were talking about aging, not related to maybe gender and sexuality, but just aging in general, I was a little bit concerned at the number of ageist comments that my students would make and that I was constantly correcting. So I was thinking to myself, is there a space or a need or a desire to bring together, young adults, 18, 19, 20, 21, with seniors in not a play group per se, but more of a conversation type intergenerational connection setting. I was thinking kind of like in that, obviously not dating, but like in that speed dating setting where you get to talk to a lot of different people and you have these like prompts to help facilitate a 10-minute discussion. So the goal of it is for college students to realize the connections and similarities between generations versus how different generations can be, and also realizing that they have so much to learn from those who are older than them, right? So it wouldn't be about, because I think what I often see is where college students are providing some type of service to a senior, but rather flipping it where the service is a senior actually educating college students more on lived experiences. So I wanted to get everyone's feedback about that. Do you think that's even of interest? What are your reactions with that?
All right, well, let's see what we've got here. It's okay. I'll come back to Teresa's comment on movement. I think this is really good. And Nicole says, you could make it a place where college kids could work on their presentation skills and practice speaking clearly and projecting their voice on any topic, and the seniors could give feedback. College kids would be less arrogant if they were scared to speak. And yeah, what a great idea, Nicole. I think that's, what public speaking is scary. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the older adults in general, I have found to be a more empathetic audience because they've lived for so long. Now, there's gonna be, that tough audience member, but that is in all generations. Alison, I know that all universities have sort of like a success center where students can be matched up with tutors. If that concept, perhaps talking with the success center and seeing if there's students on campus that would want to connect with older adults to talk about their projects and things of that nature. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Morgan says, check out Dinner with Generations. That's exactly like what you're talking about. I've also seen Skill Swap program where older adults teach college students about something, and then the college student teaches the older adults about something. The program culminates with a talent show. Oh man, this is great. This is really cool. Let's see. Jocelyn says, my organization, Empowering the Ages, does this with high school students and it works well. And let's see. Dixie says, my high school daughter's writing class visited World War II students, seniors, and wrote a chapter storybook on their memoirs. Each senior got a copy in a formal reading presentation.
Cool.
Yeah, I think this is great. Let's see. Okay, now let me go back up. Dixie is talking about a possible research partnership, could be Iona Senior Services Day Health in DC and the Janney Elementary. And then Teresa says, talking about movement, this comes to mind, using a beach ball and just drawing random shapes, and within the shape, it has questions like, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream? What is your favorite color? Then you could play keep it in the air, but with a twist that it would be caught like every couple of hits, and read the questions in your right hand. This is, yeah, what a fun way to sort of engage the students and the young children in conversation. And let's see here. Back to the bingo. Marianne says her bag, zippered coin purse of nickels were the prize for winning. The activity director allowed many winners by continuing the game after someone won without clearing the board. So everyone left with at least some nickels. That's great. Okay. Physically, Renata says, physically getting older kids and seniors together might be challenging. Zoom pairings might work, but you would need to disable the phones and other sites on the computer to stop teens from multitasking. I think the interactions would be really helpful to the teens and eye-opening. Yeah, I agree. And as somebody who taught college for a few years in the online world, and I have a high school student, it's really difficult to get that generation to turn their camera on so that you can see them. Have you experienced that at American University?
Yeah, so at American, they're not required to have their cameras on. So it's a equity issue. So because, we don't know where they're necessarily, zoomed in at. So for privacy purposes, they don't need their cameras on. So it can be a bit of a challenge. I try and avoid Zoom at all costs when it comes to this type of work, but I do recognize though, for certain locations, especially in rural communities, like we would have to do something like that. But, and thank you for the Iona comment as well. I have met with someone at Iona and they are very eager. The challenge with using schools and Iona is that, again, we have to deal with DCPS and all their regulations, and it gets a little bit kind of clunky and tricky. So at least this first time around, we might do an easier lift just to see what works.
There's a lot of people talking about, several people have comments and suggestions on teen volunteers helping teach older adults how to use their phones. And let's see, somebody says, my church does this, brings together older adults and young adults monthly, and each generation is able to ask the same questions of each other. It's wonderful to see the similarities and the aha moments. And they also have teams that teach computer skills. I had mentioned at the beginning of this that 13 years ago, I moved in and I lived in 5 different senior living residents. And one of the ideas that I had was a trading places experience where a college student would trade places with an older adult. And so I went up to Philadelphia, and because there's lots of colleges up there, and I stayed in a senior living community, and I was talking about this with the hopes to recruit these trading places experience, and my thought would be, wouldn't it be cool if a college student lived in the senior living community for a few days and hung out with this older adult. And then the older adult went to the campus and hung out with the college student. And what was interesting is at the end of my first presentation to the folks, they said there was this one resident that just hung out. She wasn't going to leave, and she was being critical throughout the meeting. But then when everybody was gone and it was just me and the management, she goes, "I'll do it." And it's like, really? And I was like, she goes, "But the college student needs to be gay because I'm gay and I live here. I'm the only one. And I think that I could really help a young adult." And we didn't do the trading places, but we took this resident to the University of Pennsylvania LGBT Center, which was one of the first in the country. And she met with the student leadership there, and they had this dialogue. And this woman is one of these women that sort of always had a perpetual frown on. She had a smile the entire time, but one of the most touching things was there was 2 students in this group that had never talked to anybody over the age of 30 who was gay. And this was the first time they were talking to somebody. They didn't talk to their parents, to their grandparents, to their family, and hearing the engagement between this woman. And I wanted to share that with you because you brought up the LGBT thing, but also it ties into the college thing.
No, it's interesting you bring that up because it is one of a different secondary goal, not of the intergenerational playgroups, but of building intergenerational connections, is connecting some of my students who identify as LGBTQ with some of, DC LGBTQ elders, because there is that disconnect, because sometimes these young people, like you said, have never really chatted with anyone who's older than themselves, because they might be the only person who was gay in their community, or maybe they recently came out. So it is something we're interested in doing as well.
Yeah. And like Nicole says here, music teachers can bring students from private preschools, playgroups, Girl Scout troops. Like we were talking about LGBT, but it could be more global than that, of just any sort of interest. So like, wouldn't it be fascinating to talk to, if you're a Girl Scout and you're passionate about being in scouting, to talk to somebody who's in their 70s and 80s who was also in Girl Scouts, and there's such a dialogue that could occur in those conversations. Dixie has some other suggestions with some charter schools that might be easier in the DC area. So
I love the idea of Girl Scouts. I didn't think about a little bit older kids.
Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, youth sports leagues too.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember interviewing an individual who was living in an assisted living. We do lots of stories on people in assisted living, and this gentleman was frail at this point, in his life. And I started asking him about his life, and he was this 4-sport letterman in high school and college, and he had an elementary school named after him because he was a lifelong educator. And it's also amazing especially for the younger generation. So, a kid that plays football might be talking to this frail older adult, but meanwhile, he would have killed to have the skills that this guy had when he was his age, and Girl Scout brownies start in kindergarten. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
right.
Thanks, Nicole, for that one. Okay, so let's see. What's our next slide?
So the last question is more broad, kind of going maybe outside the intergenerational play group, but maybe keeping it within that context. But what's missing? I often like to ask this question with communities who are working with, the community that I'm interested in connecting with is, what do you feel like is the largest gap when it comes to programming for those who are aging, or you just wish there was more information on it? Because of course I have this like health lens, but I'm just wondering if maybe there's this big glaring need that kind of fits maybe within this intergenerational space that could be more of a focus.
So
kind of
I'll chime in on my perspective, and I'm hoping that everybody else will jump in on what they think is missing in the senior living space. And what I would say is the thing that is really challenging is that if you say that a program is for an older adult or a senior, automatically you are creating something that a lot of people won't go to because they don't want to identify as an older adult. They want to participate in activities, but when it has the label that it's for older adults, automatically it's like, I'm not going there. And a great example is senior centers. Senior centers do wonderful things. Nobody can deny that. But if you went out on the sidewalk today and you polled, your 70, 80, 90-year-olds, and you said, hey, you want to go down to the senior center? I'm willing to bet that more than half would say, no, I'm not going there, because that's where old people are. And and the response then cannot be, well, you're old. What they're trying to say is, when they say that, is, I live amongst Black, white, young, old, divorced, married, single, what have you. And that's where people want to be. And so I believe something like this is a solution to that challenge. But anybody in the audience there want to chime in on some things that they think are missing in our senior living space?
Because I do think, when I often think about research, kind of putting that hat on, when it comes to research, I feel like all I ever read about is fall and fall risk prevention. And I'd like to go a little bit beyond the fall risk and focus more on like that psychosocial mental health well-being, because I often feel like that is, because it's hard to focus on that, which I think that intergenerational playgroup can help with those types of outcomes. But kind of going beyond fall prevention.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of mobility. I think, pets are wonderful things too, but if you look at the downside of pets, is they can potentially cause falls. And young kids are wonderful too, but there's also a fall risk there, right, with some folks. Based on all the great comments that we've received up to now, I think this is like $1 million question here. Here they come. Okay, so Morgan says, I have some ideas about programs connecting parents with older adults and grandparents, helping build the relationship and break down the stereotype, which may in turn help foster relationships between grandchildren and grandparents. When working with kids and older adults, you can't forget about the parents. Great point there. And Elva, I haven't seen you in ages, or maybe I just missed that you were on these discussions. Elva's from Texas, and she's wonderful. I'm advocating for outdoor ping pong tables in my city of Arlington, Texas, for intergenerational connections. Great, because grandfathers can play against a grandson, and strength isn't important. And that's one of the reasons why pickleball is such a popular sport. But good luck on that, Elva. I'm sure you'll make it happen.
Elva, I was going to say, Elva, that makes me think about one of the projects that I want to work on here in DC is focusing on making playgrounds more accessible for those aging. Because if you notice, if you go to a playground, all of the seating is very far away. from the interactions that are happening. So I want to work with a playground developer to better understand how could we make that seating more accessible so that there can be more of those interactions that happen.
Yeah, and again, another European thing, when you go overseas, you will see more intergenerationally designed playgrounds. Renata says perhaps couching the activity as volunteering of a senior's time rather than doing this for yourself might be helpful. Really, really good point there, Renata. And many of us have heard of, you know, the individual that resisted going to adult daycare because it's like, hey, mom, I'm taking you here. And then when you frame it as, mom, let's go on a job interview, and then you're accepted for that job interview, and now they've got tasks for you to do at the adult daycare center. So great suggestion, Renata. Nicole says another website for us, Ping Pong for Good. So let's all check that out. Laura says a big hole for me is, what can I contribute or do to help some of today's problems? I need help or ideas for a group. Really good point is that, you know, what are you doing to help? And I think, you know, actually, Alison, this is a great, I'm inspired by Laura's thought there. What if, okay, number one, there's kids at a daycare center, but what if they were foster children at a daycare center? All of a sudden, there's a higher call to action to help with today's problem, you know, kids in need, you know, or see older adults that are in need. And Elvis says, you know, playgrounds for older adults, big, oh, there, I missed it, but Morgan was talking about doing journals. Everybody can read that in the chat, which is a great idea. Barbara says, at a future time, a program on the national village to village movement for enabling folks to age in place or shelter in place, whatever the correct terminology is. We need to develop this concept. Not everyone wants a life plan community. Yep. Okay. Elvis says the playground equipment can't be too risk-free. 2 parks in my city say they have adult playground equipment, but it's things like moving a donut along a wavy track. Nothing there that looks like fun, like the equipment that you've seen in the UK with swings and things like that. Really good point. I mean, again, it's sort of like in an effort to protect older people, you create something that really isn't that much fun. Yeah. And the thing is, you can, just like any playground has levels, you know, for little kids and big kids. Wow, we burned through that hour pretty quickly. Yeah. I was looking at your slide and I was like, man, we went through an hour here. This was really great. You know, I think the thing that I like about this discussion more than anything is that we pretty much talked as a group and shared ideas for the most time. And I apologize if I rambled on too much, guys. You know, I love talking about this stuff.
I just want to thank everyone for your wonderful ideas, and I'm eager to go to the chat as well when you all are when we're done. But I do want to put my email up here. I would love to connect with many of you, as many of you who want to email me, even if we're able to maybe do a separate kind of Zoom call, brainstorming some ideas when we get to that curriculum development of this programming. And I just want to thank you all for your time. And I'm very eager to share what we find, hopefully, you know, in the new academic year, so the fall of 2023. And I'd be happy to share those outcomes with you all at a later date when we have more
Yeah,
information.
stay in touch, and you're welcome back anytime to share what's happening or have another discussion like this. And I dropped Alison's details in there, and as you guys can see, as you all can see, in the chat, you can book right on her schedule. So for some of you in this discussion today, that really sounds like you're dialed in on this topic, reach out to Alison, and then if anything materializes out of that, make sure y'all let me know so that we can get an update. You know, I always I like the TV show Shark Tank. I turn it on every now and then, and sometimes they'll do a little segment on the company and where they are after that, and that would be a really great reason for us to come together again and revisit this topic.
Mhm.
So all right, folks, well, let's see, thanks. Oops, let's see, can we receive a link of the recording? Yes, Marianne, I'll have the recording, the chat, all the contact info, and that'll be available on our website for Positive Aging Sourcebook and Positive Aging Community later this afternoon. And great. Well, Alison, thanks a lot. I hope this was helpful to you.
Very
And,
helpful.
thank everybody in the audience for participating so much. That's always what makes it great. And then just a reminder, tomorrow we've got that discussion with Artifacts on what do we do with our stuff. I think we're going to have another lively discussion there. So hope you all think about joining us tomorrow. And we'll see y'all later.
Thank you.